The elevator doors slammed shut with a finality that made Emma's heart sink. Then came the jolt, the grinding noise, and finally, darkness. "No, no, no," she whispered, frantically jabbing at buttons that no longer lit up. "Not today of all days." If you've ever felt like fate has a twisted sense of humor, stick around to see how Emma's worst nightmare becomes the beginning of something beautiful. Like this video if you've ever believed that sometimes, the universe knows exactly what we need, even when we don't, and subscribe for more stories that remind us how life-changing moments often come disguised as our worst days. Emma pressed the emergency button repeatedly, trying to ignore the sweat beading on her forehead. The small space suddenly felt impossibly smaller. She had always hated elevators, the confined space, the feeling of being suspended between floors with no control. But today, she had been running late for her job interview at the upscale boutique on the 5th floor of Westfield Mall, and the elevator had seemed like the fastest option. Now, as the seconds ticked by with no response from the emergency call button, she realized she had made a terrible mistake. Her phone showed no service. Of course. The one time she desperately needed to call someone, the universe decided to cut her connection to the outside world. Emma slid down against the wall, hugging her knees to her chest. The job interview was important, she needed it after being laid off from her previous position 3 months ago. Her savings were dwindling, and her rent was due next week. Missing this interview wasn't an option, yet here she was, trapped in a metal box with no way out. Just as panic began to claw at her throat, the elevator gave another jolt. Emma scrambled to her feet, hope flaring briefly before dying when nothing else happened. Then, from somewhere above, she heard a voice. "Hello? Is someone in there?" The voice was deep, steady, and somehow reassuring. Emma rushed to the doors, pressing her palms against the cool metal. "Yes. I'm stuck in here." The elevator just stopped, she called out, relief washing over her at the knowledge that someone knew she was there. "Maintenance has been notified. They're on their way, but it might take a while. Are you okay in there?" Emma wanted to say yes, to appear brave and composed, but a small sob escaped her instead. I'm claustrophobic," she admitted, hating how vulnerable she sounded. There was a pause, then, "My name's Noah. I'm going to stay right here until they get you out, okay? We'll talk, and time will pass faster than you think." And so they talked. Noah told her he worked as an architect in one of the offices above the mall. He had been heading out for lunch when he heard the elevator alarm. Emma shared about her interview, her recent job loss, and her love for designing clothes, a passion she had put aside for more practical career choices. "Why did you give it up?" Noah asked, his voice curious rather than judgmental. Emma sighed, surprised at how easily she was opening up to a stranger she couldn't even see. "My parents always said fashion design wasn't a real career. I believed them for a long time. And now? Now I'm 30, unemployed, and trapped in an elevator." Emma laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Maybe it's time to reconsider some life choices. Or maybe it's the universe giving you a push," Noah suggested. "Sometimes we need to be stopped in our tracks to see a different path." Their conversation flowed effortlessly, punctuated by occasional updates from Noah about the maintenance team's progress. Emma found her fear receding as they discussed everything from favorite books to childhood memories. There was something about Noah's voice, warm, thoughtful, with a hint of playfulness, that made her feel safe despite the circumstances. 2 hours passed before the elevator suddenly hummed back to life. The lights flickered on, momentarily blinding Emma. When the doors finally slid open, she found herself face to face with a man whose kind brown eyes crinkled at the corners as he smiled at her. "Emma?" he asked, extending his hand. She nodded, taking his offered hand and stepping out of the elevator on shaky legs. Noah was tall, with dark hair that curled slightly at his temples and a 5 o'clock shadow that somehow looked intentional rather than neglected. He wore a simple button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms marked with what looked like pencil smudges, evidence of his architectural work. "Thank you for staying," Emma said, suddenly aware that she probably looked a mess after her ordeal. Noah's smile widened. "I wouldn't have left." The mall security officer approached them, apologizing profusely for the malfunction and offering Emma a voucher for the food court. She accepted it absently, her attention still on Noah. "Your interview," he said suddenly. "What time was it supposed to be?" Emma checked her watch and groaned. 2 hours ago. I've definitely missed it." Noah hesitated, then said, "I know the owner of that boutique. Melissa, right? She's an old friend, I designed her house last year. Let me call her." Before Emma could protest, Noah had pulled out his phone and was dialing. She listened in amazement as he explained the situation, occasionally glancing at her with reassuring smiles. When he hung up, his expression was triumphant. "She'll see you tomorrow at 10. And she's impressed by your persistence. Apparently getting trapped in an elevator to make it to her interview shows dedication." Emma laughed, genuine this time. "I wouldn't recommend it as an interview strategy." "No," Noah agreed, his eyes lingering on hers. "But it does make for a memorable meeting." The air between them seemed to shift, charged with something neither was ready to name. Emma realized she didn't want to say goodbye just yet. "That food court voucher is for $20, she said, holding it up. "Far too much for one person. Would you like to join me for a very glamorous mall lunch? As a thank you for being my elevator crisis counselor?" Noah's face lit up. "I'd like that very much." They chose a small Italian place tucked in the corner of the food court, away from the main hustle. Over shared margarita pizza and iced teas, Emma learned that Noah had started his own architectural firm 3 years ago, specializing in sustainable design. He had a dog named Blueprint, Bluey for short, lived in a converted warehouse loft downtown, and volunteered teaching art to kids on weekends. "What about you?" he asked, leaning forward slightly. "Beyond the fashion design dreams and the elevator trauma, who is Emma?" She told him about growing up in a small town 2 hours away, her collection of vintage sewing patterns inherited from her grandmother, her tiny apartment filled with more fabric than furniture, and her habit of sketching designs on napkins and receipts whenever inspiration struck. "I'd love to see your work sometime," Noah said, and the sincerity in his voice made Emma's cheeks warm. "Most of it is just sketches. I haven't actually made anything in years." "Why not start again? You clearly still love it." Emma shrugged, tracing patterns in the condensation on her glass. "It's scary to pursue something you care about. What if I'm not good enough? What if you are?" Noah countered gently. "What if you're amazing, and the world is missing out because you're afraid to try?" His words stayed with Emma long after they exchanged numbers and parted ways, promising to meet again soon. That night, she pulled out her old sketchbooks from the back of her closet and began flipping through them. The designs were good, better than she remembered. With trembling fingers, she picked up a pencil and began to draw for the first time in years. The next morning, Emma arrived at the boutique 15 minutes early, portfolio in hand. To her surprise, Melissa didn't just want to discuss the sales associate position, she was intrigued by Emma's design background. By the end of the interview, Emma had not only secured the job but also an opportunity to design a small capsule collection for the boutique's spring lineup. She texted Noah immediately after leaving, her excitement spilling into a message far longer than she intended. His reply came within minutes: "I knew you were amazing. Dinner tonight to celebrate?" 6 months later, Emma stood in the same boutique, watching as customers browsed through her debut collection. The pieces, elegant yet practical, with unexpected details that made them special, had sold better than anyone anticipated. Melissa had already commissioned a follow-up collection and introduced Emma to several industry contacts. Noah appeared beside her, sliding an arm around her waist and pressing a kiss to her temple. "Proud of you," he murmured. Emma leaned into him, marveling at how much had changed since that day in the elevator. They had been inseparable since their mall food court date, their relationship deepening with a natural ease that made Emma believe in things like fate and perfect timing. "I've been thinking," Noah said as they walked through the mall, passing the elevator that had brought them together. "My loft has that extra room I've been using for storage. It would make a perfect studio space for a talented designer." Emma stopped walking, turning to face him. "Are you asking me to move in with you?" Noah's smile was both nervous and hopeful. "I'm asking if you want to build something together, a home, a life. I know it's only been 6 months, but when you know, you know. And Emma, I knew from the moment I heard your voice through those elevator doors." Emma thought about the fear she had felt that day, trapped, helpless, certain that everything was falling apart. She could never have imagined that the worst moment would lead to the best chapter of her life. "Yes," she said, rising on her toes to kiss him. "Yes to all of it." 1 year to the day after the elevator incident, Noah proposed in the same mall food court where they'd shared their first meal. 2 years later, they opened a joint venture, a boutique featuring Emma's designs in a building renovated according to Noah's sustainable architecture principles. And every year on their anniversary, they rode the elevator at Westfield Mall, grateful for the malfunction that had forced them to stop and find each other in a world that rarely slows down enough for such perfect accidents. Life doesn't always go according to plan. Sometimes the elevator breaks down. Sometimes we miss the interview. Sometimes we find ourselves stuck between floors, between chapters, between who we were and who we might become. But sometimes, just sometimes, these moments of apparent failure are actually doorways to something better than we could have planned. If Emma's story resonated with you, remember that your own elevator moment might be just around the corner. The universe has a way of bringing the right people into our lives exactly when we need them most, often when we least expect it. Like this video if you believe in the magic of unexpected meetings, and subscribe for more stories that remind us how love can find us anywhere, even in a broken down mall elevator.